So welcome everybody. I'm happy to see you here today again. So my name is Tony. I'm the founder of RIA, as you know, and I'm very much delighted today to welcome a gentleman I'm sure you would appreciate to meet. So Anthony Osijo, he's the group CEO of Abci-Nexus. This is the newly structured holding company behind Bboxx and recently launched Asopo Technologies. So you may not know, but for the last 15 years, so Bboxx has been one of the Africa pioneers in distributed clean energy and asset financing, impacting more than 6 million people across 7 markets. But the story today is they've entered into a new chapter, with the creation of Abci-Nexus and also the spin out of Pulse into Asopo Technologies. So the group is no longer just delivering product, but they're really building infrastructure for Africa finance future. So today we'll explore what this transformation really means commercially, strategically, but also systemically. I'm sure you're going to learn a lot from this conversation. So stay tuned. I'll be back with you in a couple of seconds. Hello again. So I'm happy to be back to you. I'm Tony from RIA. So what we do is very simple. We raise awareness about renewable energy and sustainability. So if you're interested to expand into Africa, we are your eco-bridge to this market, and we can help you with three things: the visibility, the leads, and the deals. Or if you're looking to decarbonize, we gain your eco-bridge sustainable pathway, and we can help you with carbon footprint assessment and carbon reduction strategy. I can tell you more about that, but today it's all about talking about Abci-Nexus. And I want to welcome my guest in here today, so Mr. Anthony Osijo. So Anthony, can you hear me?
Hi, Tony. Namesake, good to be here. Nice to see you.
It's almost like I'm talking to myself today, right? So which is very
good. They have said we look similar apart from the glasses, but there you go.
I like it.
You're obviously more handsome. So
yeah,
we'll
difference
leave
is
that.
So I'm not sure I support Liverpool like you. So
somebody has to, and it's the greatest club in the world. So very, very proud of those of those accolades that we've won over the years.
Yeah, congratulations to you as well. So Anthony, obviously I know you well because I must say as well you're a friend to me. But it'd be good if you could very briefly introduce yourself to our audience so that they get to know who is really Anthony Osijo.
Thank you for that, Tony. Not very good at making a song and dance about myself, but I'm Anthony Osijo. I'm the group CEO of Abci-Nexus. This is what I call my second career. My first career was as an investment banker, and I had various roles across the globe, including as deputy head for Crédit Agricole investment bank in Asia, head of Deutsche Bank in Switzerland, and most recently, until I left investment banking, I was global head of debt at Crédit Agricole, based out of London. And in the last 5 years or so, I've been working in renewable energy, trying to bring renewable energy across Africa, working with some very good old friends and colleagues of mine at Bboxx, where I was an angel investor originally, and trying to scale Bboxx across the work that it's been doing in Africa over the last, as you pointed out in the intro, over the last 15 years, and trying to take that to the next level. So I joined originally as an advisor and took over 2 years ago as a group CEO.
Yeah, I think I've watched your path into Bboxx. I must admit, it's been quite impressive. I must say. So I'm sure you're going to tell us more about that. And I want to start talking about the strategic evolution that we've seen here. So from Bboxx to Abci-Nexus, because Bboxx began as a distributed energy company, but today Abci-Nexus, I believe that you position yourself as a technology-enabled holding group. So what strategic inflection point made this structural evolution necessary in your mind?
Thanks for that. I think, as everyone knows, the DRE environment in Africa, which started about 10, 15 years ago, has struggled, right? There's a lot of difficulty that's come into Africa post-COVID and post the change in the global financial events in the world, where once interest rates in Europe and in the West went up from 0%, which they were for about 10 years, we started seeing difficulty with foreign cash flows coming into Africa. Plus also some of the ideals that the industry was built on were seen to be challenging. So there was a move for industry consolidation, a revamp or relook at the model in terms of the pay-go model, an understanding really of what we needed in terms of policy change if we were really serious about trying to end energy poverty. Because when this all started, people were talking about 600 million people being without access to energy. 10 to 15 years later, we're probably still at that same point where we have 600 million people without access to energy. Now, of course, that's because the population of Africa is exploding, and therefore we have more people being born into darkness than we have that have access to energy. So it feels like the number isn't moving. But also, the model was struggling. The model required constant injections of equity. The equity was palpable and was drying up. It required consistency in terms of policies across the region, which we didn't have or which wasn't developing quickly enough. It had a dependency on grants and subsidies, which, whilst good, do not encourage private equity investment or sustainable investment. So we had to look at how we made the model change. And what we saw was that in the previous 10 to 12 years, people had looked at investing in Africa, or investing in the energy landscape in Africa as more, I'd substitute the word impact for like charity.
Okay.
People were working with a kind of charity mindset, but people were taking loans and debt to fund, in effect, charitable work, which basically meant that there was very little return on the debt and very little return on the equity. So I was reading a Googler report the other day that seemed that during that period, about $750 million had probably been invested into the ecosystem, with very few winners. Right. So if you look at the ecosystem today, everyone in the ecosystem, as you know, as you've been involved in the ecosystem for quite a while too, whether it's on the solar home system side, whether it's on the CNI side, even on the mini grid side, most players struggled.
Yeah.
So we went through a few difficult times ourselves. We had to go through a bit of a restructuring. I'm totally open to say that. And we also needed to look at our business model in terms of what is the business model that is appropriate for the market of today and the market of the future. How do we see that development cycle going into the future? So that was why we did the strategic review. And the whole strategic review is to say, look, we were at core we were a B2C company doing last mile solar home systems distribution. That alone is no longer a sustainable model going forward. We can't bring electricity to just the 600 million people ourselves. But also we realize that, as everybody knows, that technology has also taken a big step in terms of making things accessible in the continent. Right? Technology is the next frontier. Technology is what is going to break down barriers. And we've seen that with things like M-Pesa, with the advent of mobile money, and how that's changed the landscape in the continent. We had already originally invested quite a lot of money in our Pulse platform, which we were using to service our own customers. But it made sense that we looked at segregating that out to take advantage of our expertise in the technology space, but not just using it for ourselves, but using it as well to open doors and open channels across the continent, which was why we spun out Asopo Technologies. Right. Bboxx will still retain as a name, will still retain as a presence in terms of the retail operations and the B2C dealing with the markets directly. But it gives us, as Abci-Nexus, it gives us the group the opportunity to become a conglomerate where we're not just looking at a retail business, but we're also looking at a technology business. But it also gives us the room to grow into other complementary business lines as we decide to do so.
Yeah. I think, thank you very much for this answer, because you also tap into why you move Asopo into that spin out company, so Purse into Asopo Technologies, you spin out, right? So that's great to hear that. But you mentioned about as well reorganizing the group, because you've gone through restructuring, as you mentioned, and obviously just to come back stronger, which it seems like you're doing. So you've separated, Bboxx from the technology and the governance and capital, Abci-Nexus, which is the holding company. So according to you, how does this architecture improve the performance rather than just simplify reporting line?
There's nothing to do with reporting lines at all. At the end of the day, our investors expect to see return on their investment. So everything that we're doing is geared towards that. There's nothing that's done just for a structural. It looks nice on an org chart kind of thing. Now, in terms of the Bboxx retail and consumer credit side of things, that is a business that is quite specific. We want to make sure that that's not tainted or impaired by any other issues around technology, any other issues around other businesses that are not fixed on that, right? So we want to make sure that the guys on the ground who are focused on selling solar home systems, who are focused on selling mobile phones, or who are doing the last mile distribution are focused on that. And therefore, we have that as a company that does that in itself. Previously, there was a little bit of confusion as to what we did, and we called ourselves a super platform. But people in the market didn't understand what a super platform was. They didn't understand. They were like, are you an Amazon? Are you Jumia? Are you a utility? Are you a hybrid of everything? And when people don't understand what you are, it's also very difficult for people to invest in the business or understand what the business does. So this was done primarily to provide clarity in terms of the businesses, both to ourselves and to the external world. Right, so it's very clear if you're interested in the utility side, the energy access side of things, Bboxx is your name. If you're interested in technology and how that actually moves things forward and last mile distribution, Asopo is your name. Right, and the businesses, whilst complementary, are separate. So Bboxx will be a customer to Asopo, but anybody can be a customer to Asopo.
That makes it very clear. And talk about Bboxx, because like you say, so I've known Bboxx pretty much since it was started, and it's done a great job so far. And like you say, so challenges in the industry, but that's for everyone to see. Basically, everybody's gone through that. But Bboxx, from what I understand now, it's beyond solar now. So you will run across, clean cooking, smartphone, e-mobility, financial service. I know the whole idea for you is about bringing clarity. That's why you separate the two, Asopo and Bboxx. Great. But Bboxx itself, would you say that your mission really, it's energy access, or is it not financial inclusion at scale, or both?
It's both, right? So what we're trying to do is we're working in developing markets. And what you have to do as a company is to be agile as to the needs of your customer. Right. So in the West, we've always talked about customer stickiness. If you have a good customer, you don't just sell him one thing or her one thing. Anthony. You don't just sell him or her one thing. Sorry, that's Alexa in the background. You don't just sell him or her one thing and then walk away. What you try to do is make sure that when you have a customer, you develop with them, they develop with you. And therefore, what we want to develop as well is customer loyalty, brand loyalty. So it's important that we, as our expertise is in the last mile, we know how to get to the customer more than anybody else does because we have that distribution channel, we have the data. It means that we're also aware of what their needs are. So if people have access to energy, then you also want to give them access to what energy can power, right? We have seen the development of mobile phones and that market over the last few years because everybody has a mobile phone, right? Some have two, some have three, right? Now, when you look at the reports, they say 95% of Africa has a mobile phone, right? So therefore, what you then need to make sure the mobile phones are charged is access to energy. So that's one of those things that you need to charge your mobile phones. Then we look at what we want to do in terms of education. If we want to increase education across the board, then what you need to be able to provide education is electricity. So again, access to energy. But that doesn't, in order to facilitate that, we can also supply to the schools or to the students access to tablets as well, because that is part of that whole package. We speak to a lot of our rural customers are farmers. So once we've provided them with access to electricity, what they also need in terms of developing their farming is access to solar pumps, right? Because that helps them with irrigation. So you move into that sector as well, because it's access to agriculture, and 80% of your customers anyway in the rural area are all farmers. So you help them develop in that way, right? And then the next thing is when obviously you get to mobility, right? We work in an environment now where Africa's biggest opportunity, as you've talked about in some of your previous podcasts, is how do we sort of like enhance and capture the carbon opportunities, given that Africa only produces a minuscule amount of the world's carbon emissions, but therefore has an opportunity in terms of being able to provide the offset. So there is a lot of stuff around EVs and using a battery operated vehicles as opposed to fuel operated vehicles, right? And as you can imagine, motorcycles, for example, are a productive use tool for a lot of people in terms of transport, especially in the rural areas. So if you can then make them battery operated, and then you're financing that or you're providing access to that, there's a natural flow of things in terms of what the consumer wants that makes sense. So we're not a jack of all trades. At the heart of everything that we want to do is the customer, is the consumer. And it's bringing that empowerment to the person, right, through a trusted partner, a trusted source, and almost like a one-stop shop.
Mm. And talking about that customer, I want to talk about the underserved customer that I know you've served, for the last 15 years, and you've done a great job, as I say. So your technology ports, or should I say Asopo now, right, integrates mobile money, AI credit scoring, so asset tracking in markets where we know the formal finance is quite scarce, right? That's why you have to come up with solution to adapt to the market. Now, throughout this experience that you've gathered, so what have you as a company learned about trust, repayment behavior, and dignity in those low income markets?
So I'll probably speak to this as an investment banker rather than as an energy access provider.
Yeah,
I
many
think
have.
there's
That's
a
fine.
yes, I think there's a reality here, which is that there is no magic you can do to make, low income not be low income, right? So there is a challenge when there is low income or no income, right? And there is a lot of that. And some of that, resolving that issue is a social issue, right? Poverty is a social issue. We as private companies can bring solutions, but somebody has to pay for them, right? So when you talk about the trust kind of thing, it is important for us to understand what our job is as private companies. In the past, that line has become blurred, where companies tend to almost act like charities, and that's why we saw the big issues with the first range or first wave of DRE companies. Because rather than thinking with the bottom line, everybody was thinking with the heart, which is good, but it's incompatible. It's sometimes incompatible. So what we've understood today is that at the bottom of the pyramid, where we have extreme poverty, those markets are only sustainable if there are government policies, not rebates, but subsidies and grants in place. Somebody has to pay for the kit. If those things are not in place, there is no sort of like magic solution that works. And this is where the liaison with government, the liaison with the World Bank, the liaison with all of these DFIs to come up with sustainable, long-lasting policy decisions is important if they really want to solve that issue. Because when you talk about an investor who invests in me or who invests in an investor is called that because in the English word invest, they want a return. And we therefore have to provide them a return. Historically, the market has survived on 65%, 60% collection rates. That's impossible if you want to be profitable. It's just impossible. By the time you combine, that means that you have a 35% loss rate. Plus then you have a 30 to 35% funding rate to people who are at the lower end of the affordability era. So the only way you can be profitable is if you're charging, let's say, like an 80% margin. You can't charge an 80% margin because they can't afford it. So that cycle is impossible, no matter how romantic we get, without the right policies in place. However, what is also really important to note is that when we talk about the energy issues, we even at the top level, right? Energy is intermittent, right? Even, I was in DRC recently, to name a place, right? I was in a pretty high-star hotel in the middle of Kinshasa. The electricity went off 7 times in 6 hours, right? So then you have the diesel generators which combat that. And then you also have to find another solution, because diesel generators make a lot of noise at night. So there is a market for that as well, where the affordability is higher than it would be at the bottom, at the more challenged levels of the pyramid.
Hmm. Hi, Anthony, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, that's fine. I thought you were frozen there for a second.
No. I just I came to a natural end to my statement.
That's fine. Okay, it took me a couple of seconds to realize
Yes.
that was your bot or something like that. Now, okay. You were talking about looking at paying attention to the bottom line, which is true for any company to survive. You have no choice but to look at that. Otherwise, like you say, you should call yourself a charity. But I've also realized that Abci-Nexus, you proudly saying that you're contributing to 12 of 17 SDGs. And what coming to my mind, it was like, isn't there a risk potentially just to focus too much on the impact narrative and somehow moving away, diverting the commercial rigor that you want to bring back to the company now?
Not at all. I think they're complementary, right? We're a company that wants to make profit first, and by making profit, we'll do all these other good things. It's not a case of doing all these good things and then hoping that you're going to make a profit. Actually, we are a business. We want to be a business. Our focus is on the bottom line. We look at everything that we do in terms of unit economics. And I'm not ashamed to say so. We are a business. We're not a charity. Now, we can do a lot more work and benefit a lot more people if we're alive. We can do a lot more business and benefit a lot more people if we have money that is being then redeployed. That's how you grow, being redeployed into those markets. If you're begging and shrimping every single time, then your impact is less.
Correct.
And I always say this, that to people that look at how much effort and what the kind of work that the Bill Gates Foundation can do today, or the MasterCard Foundation. They could do so much more work than even governments can do. But that's because they're very profitable and successful businesses, because all of these platforms that we're working on, Windows, whatever it is, Bill Gates has built them, right? And therefore he can give back now that he's successful and nobody notices. MasterCard charges you on your transactions every time. So they can give back 1% or 2% of their overall profit. And it seems, they've got 300 million dedicated to Africa this year. It's a lot. So when we're successful, we can do even more, right? So we mustn't, there is absolutely no confusion in my mind. And this is also something we're bringing into the company, that what we want to do first and foremost is be profitable.
Yep.
We're not sharks. We're not trying to, make money off the back of poor people. What we're saying is, in order to be able to grow our businesses and in order to be able to help people more, the more successful we are, we all become successful together.
Yeah. No, I think it makes sense. I think this is something as well I've been preaching and defending in the industry, because I know at times when we talk about green, so we like to always associate that to charity, which it shouldn't. Like you say, if we're profitable, then we can do many more of those great work that we're doing. Absolutely. Let me move you to another chapter of this conversation, which I'm finding very interesting. So I want to come back a little bit, talk about the platform, right, that you have developed. You mentioned that Asopo now, you moving that to a market where you'll be a B2B SaaS platform. And you said that Bboxx will be a customer to Asopo, but everybody else. Then who is everybody else? Who is the ideal customer then Asopo be looking for? Is there other pay-go operators, telcos, bank, governments? Who is the ideal customer?
So there's a lot of I mean, actually, you've answered the question for me already. All of the above, right? So, I'm not really targeting other paygo operators per se, right? A lot of them have their own systems. A lot of them use systems like Angaza. Yeah, that's not a market where I think if that was our target, I don't think it would make sense for us to do a spin-off. I think when I look at the traditional financial institutions, they're a target. When I look at the microfinance institutions, they're a target. We need to look at where financial inclusion is going. Financial inclusion is going to the last mile. In the past, if you earned less than, I don't know, let's say $10,000 a year, you couldn't get a bank account. You couldn't get access to finances, right? And which then means your ability to develop is restricted because you keep your money under your pillow or you dig a hole in your garden, right? Now, fintech has brought access to to financial inclusion to the doorstep.
Yep.
We are able to, because we've already served over 1.2 million customers. We already have details of people's payment profiles. We already have details of how people react in a certain region. We already have credit history and dynamics that allows us to predict very closely how people are likely to behave, right? So this credit judgment of the middle to lower bands, people, is something that doesn't exist elsewhere, right? So in order to bring that financial inclusion to products as we develop, because Africa, for example, only 3% of people in Africa have real insurance, whether it's actual insurance for farming, whether it's insurance for anything else, life insurance, all of these products that in the West we take for granted, health insurance, nobody has those. But unless you have financial inclusion where you have data, where you can predict what you're doing from an actuarial perspective, that's never going to develop. So we know that we have that technology to help that. So we will work alongside insurance companies, we'll work alongside banks. Everybody can't build their own, right? We need to move away from this thought that, I have my own shop, I have my own business. Everybody has their own microeconomy. We need to start going to the point where we have systems that are utilized across Africa, right? Where everybody is not building their own little expertise, but you have bigger systems, bigger pools of data, because that's how you can then bring bigger pools of money to invest into that data.
That's very interesting. I could see where the potential is here, and I can see the market that you're chasing. So, yes. I would say as well, just follow up to that, that asset financing software, it's not a blue ocean anymore, right?
Yes.
And then, would you say the fact that you have some data history and your experience that you've gathered through Bboxx is what makes Asopo structurally hard to replicate, even if you had other people wanting to build a platform?
We spent $35 to $40 million on Pulse already, right? $35 to $40 million isn't something to turn your nose up. So that in itself is a barrier to entry. We've also spent 10 years doing that, right? So you don't just take, as you know, with software development, you don't just wake up in the morning and decide you want to do something, right? And in this day of AI and where you can even get an AI, a bot to start designing your software for you and building things. Expertise, experience, market knowledge is not something that you can just pick up in 5 seconds. And if you do, it's going to be extremely expensive. We have made a lot of mistakes. We've learned from those mistakes. And as I say jokingly sometimes, you're right, but people, it's actually, you can't leapfrog everything. You can't leapfrog development. You can't go from being 3 years old, a 3-year-old baby, to being a 12-year-old adolescent, no matter how clever you are, right? Sometimes you just got to go through a process. And the process of learning that we've been through is one that takes time. It's quite painful, but we're there. So we want to take advantage of it going forward. Africa is, and the other thing that you addressed silently there, which I just want to touch on, is this whole thing around competition. There is so much room. We have maybe 5-10 unicorns in the entirety of Africa, right? We have, in some countries, we don't even have half of a unicorn, right? We have over 600 million people still without access to electricity. The population of Africa is going to grow from 1.5 billion today to 2.5 billion by 2050. 60% of Africa is under 26 and is growing and is right. Right now, with all the guys who've been in the market for 15 years, since the beginning of this energy access industry, we've probably all between us done 10, maybe maximum 20 million people in real terms, not to talk of the inflation that everybody puts in. So if you've done 20 out of 600 million, there's space for a lot of.
You make it a good point because I must say, because I'm in the sector obviously, so Bboxx has been one of the pioneers, but even with the good work that you have done, we're still at 600 million. So it's almost like we're back to square one.
No, but the thing is, everybody wants to live a good life, right? So everybody concentrates in Nairobi, right? Or concentrates in the places which are nice to live, which are nice to live in, very close to the West. And there's a huge expat community, right? Trying to do things in the hard to reach places, right? We have, like we're in DRC, right? You look at half of Eastern DRC, there's a conflict there. You can't go to Sudan, you can't go to South Sudan. It's very difficult to go into Ethiopia, right? So even if you go into North Kenya, where you have a lot of camps, so when we look at all the places that don't actually have electricity at all, it's not because they're Nairobi or Cape Town or Lagos. It's because they're areas which are difficult to bring things to. And we've also always got to remember that when we talk about the people that we have in Africa, 10% of them live in the big cities. Everybody else lives in a village. It's just that because when we sit in the towns, we fly into the airports, we tend to forget that actually, if you're in Cameroon and you're outside Yaoundé and Douala, there's a lot of stuff, right, that people don't see and don't know.
Correct.
Right? But nobody knows because nobody reports it. Yeah. Now we have, and you've seen the map of Bboxx, where in terms of all the places that we've penetrated, with the work that the founders of Bboxx had done in the early days, the penetration is amazing, right? In terms of the last mile of places that you actually get to, and the opportunity in those places, because now these guys have mobile phones, they have access to social media. Their expectation no longer is to sit in the village and just farm and sleep. They have higher aspirations. So unless we create reasons for them to stay in the village, or reasons for them to develop the villages or the mini towns or the peri-urban areas, everybody can't live in the main towns. Right, you'll have social unrest, you'll have other problems. So it's income. That's why, when I look at the business model we have right now, I'm very enthused by it, because I don't think the continent has a choice, even though the continent is not one, right? It's 54 different countries. We don't have a choice in the continent but to focus on the development of these areas that are outside the big cities and give them the amenities that they deserve.
Yeah, otherwise nobody's going to be living at peace. Yeah, that's absolutely that's absolutely a fair point. I think I have a few more questions just to go through. Like I said, that we've had a very interesting conversation, but I also must keep in mind the time we have allocated. I saw in your from your website that you recently appointed a new country director or managing director in Nigeria.
Yes.
So with this leadership reinforcement, and I know you also participated in the DARES fund, which is targeting, I think, 100,000 households. It's about 2026, if I'm correct. I want to ask you, because you also sort of mentioned that very quickly here. You say that you're in GLC. You made many countries in Africa that I know. From that part, as I say, you've done a great job in penetrating those parts. But what differentiates markets where you want to double down, like in Nigeria, and those you want to exit, because you say that it's difficult just to get access to?
Again, I see, Tony, you have this wonderful way of answering questions where you also provide the answer at the same time, right? So,
because you're my namesake, right? I can read.
Right, exactly. So you're an interviewee's dream in a way, right? So I mean, Nigeria is is one of those unfortunate or fortunately no-brainers for anyone who wants to invest in Africa.
Correct.
Nigeria has 230 million people, right? One fifth of one out of every five Africans is a Nigerian in a way. If you look at that kind of number, and in terms of population growth, is projected to grow exponentially over the next 20 to 25 years. It has 80 million people outside that don't have access to electricity. So when you think about it, it has the number of people that don't have access to electricity or don't have access to energy is more than the population of like 7 or 8 other African countries put together, just the people who don't have access, including you, right? So the world realizes that you can't fix Africa's problems without fixing Nigeria's problems, right? Because the numbers are just so huge, right? Togo next door to Nigeria and Benin, Togo is 8 million people, Benin is 10 or whatever it is, so between the two of them is 18 million, 20 million. Let's please don't shoot me if I get the numbers exactly wrong, but that's Lagos State in Nigeria alone is 23 million people. Right. So you can't, as a business, and when we're looking at, what is the other challenge that we have as a business? The challenge we have as businesses is the multiple currencies we have across Africa.
Correct.
Right. The multiple jurisdictions, the multiple policies. So if you can go into Nigeria and you can make it work, which has one currency, the Naira, which has, let's say, one set of policies, that if you can make that work, it's probably the same as going to 4, 5, or 6 other countries at the same time. Now, we can't ignore the other countries, which is why Rwanda for us is our regional headquarters, in fact, and we're doing a lot of stuff based out of there. But we're also in Kenya, we're in DRC, we're in Ghana, we're in Ivory Coast, we're in Togo, and we're in Nigeria. So Nigeria is important. Nigeria's realized that it can't do it on its own. The World Bank has put in place a subsidy program, which, whilst it's been delayed in launching, is now beginning to take effect. So we need to make sure that reaches the right pockets, that reaches the right people that it's meant to serve. And that gives the markets confidence to put money into Nigeria. It also gives Nigerians confidence to put money in their own country,
Okay,
which is also, yes, one of those really important things about investing in Africa is that investing in Africa also, Africa also has a lot of money, which it should invest in itself.
Absolutely. I think that's one of the key message. Pretty much everywhere I go now, I sort of drum up about. We need to see African capital into those big African projects. I think we need that. We need to start owning this project because we are the ones who are going to be building the continent. So let me come back to the last part of the conversation. Is pretty much looking about the future vision, right? Because as I said at the start of the conversation, we're entering a new chapter because Bboxx and the fantastic story, as I would say, maybe the first life. And it's got to resonate well with you also because you're in your second life. I don't know if you're going to go in your third life, though, maybe as as an artist, a singer. I don't know. You have many talents. So it looks like Bboxx probably attracted you for that as well. So Bboxx into its second life. So Abci-Nexus. So now, if we sort of project ourselves in the next 10 years, 10 years from now, you and I will meet again. I'm sure we still going to look as beautiful as we are today. So barely older.
I'll probably be as white as you by then.
I'll stay the same, I promise you. So if we look 10 years ahead, so what would you want Abci-Nexus to be known for primarily?
Primarily, I would want it to be known for agility, the ability to respond to the ever-changing landscape that we actually have within our markets, to be able to respond using technology to the needs of our customers in ways that allow us to continuously remain profitable, right? The markets, we've learned from all of our MBAs and all of the relevant, the markets never stay the same. I'm old enough to remember when we had Betamax and VHS. I'm old enough to remember when we had record discs. I'm old enough to remember when we had CDs. Right. So all of these markets, there were companies that were set up to sell these, and they've all evolved or died. Right. So what I would want to make sure that we're able to do, especially by being at the forefront of technology, which is evolving, is to be able to evolve with the needs of our market, to be able to provide services to our customers in ways that are dynamic, beneficial to both, and where we become known as systemically and critically important to these guys. I would like our names to be brand names that are quoted in musician songs, right? As people quote Versace and stuff like that. I would like us to be a name that when people talk about access to things, we're synonymous with that.
Hmm. That's excellent. That's a big dream and big vision, right? So I'm hoping that you get there. I give a call to my friend David O. Who knows?
Well,
Maybe
yeah, well, you see, but you
you
look,
want
think about it right now. Just again, think. 20 years ago, there was no word called Google in the dictionary,
that's
right? Now
correct.
you
Chat
say
GPT.
anything, somebody goes, Google it, right? Google is not even Google is a brand name.
It's a
That's how
verb
it's.
now.
Yes, but look at it now. It's our verb, right? It has. You can be Googling,
Yeah,
right? So there are these various things that, in terms of the environment that we're in terms of the markets that we serve, there is so much opportunity for us to be at the ground level, the first level, the second level, second floor level. There's so much excitement here, and it's challenging. It
yeah,
really is challenging. But what we have to do, we have so much opportunity in Africa, to do things on the ground in Africa that it's exciting. It excites me. It excites the company. We need to make sure that the excitement is felt by everybody, because there's still a lot of naysaying and a lot of people who tend to want to highlight the negatives, of which there are. But I think we have to have a belief system. The belief system has to come from within Africans themselves, right? Because we need to stop telling people we need to be able to believe and do our thing, right? We can take an example from China. China doesn't ask anyone for permission, right?
just
They
everything.
they went ahead and did their stuff. They wanted to be the best in the world at technology, at doing things. They disagreed with everybody else who said whatever they wanted to say. And look at where they are today. But you barely can see anything that's made in this world, right?
That's in China. Yeah, that's
That's not made in China. And they haven't said any, they just went ahead and did it. I
yeah,
was fortunate enough to be working in Hong Kong. I lived out in Asia for 6 years. When the China push was going, and what they've managed to achieve in the last 20 years is nothing short of miraculous. So we have the same number of people in Africa as they do in China. Unfortunately, China is a country. We're not. But still, if we have all those brain cells and we have all those people and we have all that talent, then we need to make it count.
correct. I love those words. So you've actually started your job as a CEO for Bboxx at a very turbulent time, and then you've gone through that, and you emerge into a new chapter. Just as a lesson here, because a lot of people will see you, I would say, as a one of the champion of Africa, one of the big CEOs in Africa. That's where you're going anyway. So, from a personal leadership point of view, what did you have to unlearn to be able to properly lead the company into this new chapter? Because you had to see things differently to completely change the paradigms to move into this new direction. And I'm sure it has not been easy. That I know. Obviously, we've had a few conversations that obviously we can't share in this platform, but we have a few conversations. But I got a feeling that's the perception thing. That you guys now seeing the light at the end of a tunnel. That's a perception. That's what I'm saying. I may be wrong, but what did you have to unlearn to be able to steer the company into this new chapter?
I think we're still steering. I don't want to bounce on accolades. And there's a lot of, I don't want to disparage all of the good work that happened before. The fact is, the world changed in 2020 with COVID, and then with all of the other things that happened with the flight of. I think the important thing that everyone should look at is we should stop looking at our businesses in Africa as charities. We need to look at businesses in Africa as businesses. And we need to make sure that even if they're businesses that need to lead to development, that the policies have to come from within. You need to create an enabling environment. You need to create an environment where, yes, if you want to have things done, there has to be the rule of law. There has to be transparency of taxation. There has to be a love for expertise coming in to help, no suspicion of foreigners all the time, right? Or we build it ourselves, right? But the thing, you've got to KYC, you've got to know your countries, right? No, the rules are different in every country. You need to know them, you need to understand them, you need to be embedded. And whereas, coming from Europe, as where I did most of my career, you can believe just in the system working through the structures. Actually, you need to be very hands-on, right? If you're not hands-on, people are hustling, people have 2 or 3 different jobs. If you're not hands-on, your job will be their bonus job, right? So you need to have your hands on and your eyes on whilst you're growing these businesses, and you need to pay attention to detail.
Yeah.
Right. And that is it's really important. And then of course you need to be a little bit lucky.
Correct.
Right? Because you can do all of these things right, and you could have a volcanic eruption in Goma, or you could have a change of government somewhere, something like that, or you could have a change of tax laws, right, that you didn't count for, right? And then that becomes
no headache.
Yeah, exactly. But if you do the right things, right, I'm not an apologist for anything. If you do the right things, you concentrate on the metrics. At the end of the day, if you're selling, you buy at 2, you sell at 3. Don't buy at 2 and sell at 1.
Business.
Business 101. 101. It's the same everywhere, right? Don't let's not pray somehow that when you buy at 2 and you sell at 1, somebody is going to give you a lottery ticket from somewhere.
I love it. No, that's beautiful. That's beautiful word. So, Anthony, I think we came to the end of our conversation here, but I usually always leave one big surprise at the end. So, but don't worry, it's nothing too bad. So, what we're going to do just right now. So, I'm just going to leave you the floor for 1 minute, no more than that, no more, not a second more, where I will let you just share any important message directly to your potential investors or potential customers, but you choose who you want to speak to or address the message to. But it's just 1 minute, and I'm just going to be on backstage and let you carry on. So, who do you want to speak to?
I want to speak to our partners.
Good. Okay, don't say more. Let me just go on backstage and leave you the floor for a minute, and then you will say to them what you have to say to them, and that would be great. So
this is unrehearsed, by the way. I didn't know this, so I'll have to do this.
Good. But that's why you're the group CEO. So let me do it. Okay, I'm gone.
Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. This is Anthony Osijo, the Group CEO of Abci-Nexus. Thank you for staying with us for the last 15 years in our different guises and different ways that we've existed, both as Bboxx, now as Abci-Nexus, and also as Asopo. Looking forward to working with you together as we explore the next 10 to 15 years. We have a lot to offer. We have a lot to deliver. The one thing that I can guarantee is that we as an organization now are focused on, first of all, serving our customers to the best of our ability, which we're able to do using a combination of our last mile experience and our digital platform. So that's something that we're also committed to delivering value to our shareholders, to our investors, to our stakeholders, to our staff. That is something that is very close to my heart. We want to be excellent at everything that we do. We will channel a culture of excellence across our performances to all of our stakeholders. Right? That is something that that we are looking to do. So I join you to come on this journey with us. Thanks to RIA for facilitating this podcast. Come on this journey with us. It's going to be fun. We're going to ride the waves here, but we're going to deliver value. Thank you.
Excellent. That was a great message, by the way. I know it was unrehearsed, but just the thing, I wanted you to speak from the heart, and you did that. So, Anthony, what is left for me to say? Just thank you, just seriously, because this has been a beautiful conversation, and I know. So we planned that for a good few months, but everything happened for a reason at the right time, and I think today was certainly the right time to get it done. I can only wish you the best for the new chapter you're starting today, and as I say, I'll be watching your progress and obviously support whenever possible. So thank you very much. And then, make sure that you become a unicorn for this beautiful continent that we have.
Let's go on this journey together. As I said, yeah, we'll be one of our partners too. I look forward to it.
I didn't know the message was for me, but yeah, I take it.
As I said, partners. You are a partner.
Thank you very much, Anthony. I
Thank you, my
appreciate it.
man. Thank you.
Thank you. So you just heard Anthony, so the conversation that we had. So what a beautiful conversation we had. So there's so many things we can impact from that. I'm hoping that you were there taking note, learning from the journey that they've had, right? So what we've heard today is not just the evolution of a company, but this is clearly for me a redesign of the whole system, right? From Bboxx, last mile retail engine, to Asopo, digital infrastructure, to Abci-Nexus, governance, capital strategy. This is a fascinating story about building the rail beneath Africa finance future. That's what we'll say. So in the first chapter, it was all about distributing solar system. But the next chapter, I get the feeling it may well be about distributing opportunities at scale. That's what I say. So 600 million, that's what we're talking about. But I'm sure we can serve this customer and bring them into the real economy. So thank you very much for sharing both the ambition and the architecture, Anthony. So behind it. So we learned a lot. I certainly learned a lot. I picked up the message at the end for the partner. And yes, we see ourselves as one of your partner. And then we'd be more than happy to do the fair share of our work. So thank you very much for everybody listening to us. And I'm sure we will see you next time with another, I would say, key person from the industry in Africa. So thank you very much and bye-bye.